Hello, kind people. Let us learn about the inconvenient artifact, the Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek. In eastern Lebanon lies the city of Baalbek. It can lay claim to some of the most spectacular ruins on Earth, the ruins of the Temple of Jupiter. Scholars believe that in 27 BC, the Roman Emperor Augustus decided to build the greatest, most magnificent, and most lavish temple ever constructed in the ancient world, and to do so literally in the middle of nowhere. The ruins at Baalbek are immense, with a huge podium built upon a broad platform that still retains 3 enormous retaining walls. These retaining walls contain 27 limestone blocks larger than those found anywhere else in the world. Each block in these walls weighs more than 300 metric tons. However, 3 of the blocks weigh more than 800 tons each. This trio of blocks has become world famous and is known as the Trilithon. The Temple of Jupiter is one of the most impressive ancient temples in the world. It measures 88 meters by 48 meters and stands upon a platform as podium with a broad staircase that can truly be described as monumental. The podium itself rises a full 13 meters above the surrounding terrain. The Trilithon in the retaining walls consists of 3 of the 4 largest stone blocks ever quarried. If events are viewed within the officially accepted academic historical framework, the location chosen for the Temple of Jupiter makes little real sense. There is no obvious reason why Augustus would have selected Baalbek as the site for such a complex temple. In Roman times, Baalbek was only a small town on the trade route to Damascus. It held no particular religious or cultural significance for Rome, apart from being at the center of a region favored by local tribes as a burial place. It also seems entirely uncharacteristic of the undeniably self-serving Roman Empire to create such lavish and extravagant architecture in Lebanon, at a place like Baalbek located so far from Rome. The Romans were an exceptionally and undeniably acquisitive empire. They appropriated historical treasures from other lands, such as the obelisks of Egypt. At the same time, the Temple of Jupiter was under construction. It seems far more logical to assume that Baalbek possessed something else that the Romans wanted, perhaps something that no other place, not even Rome, could offer them. And why did so many people want to be buried there? Historians state that the temple is unquestionably of Roman origin. However, there are serious problems with that claim. An examination of the retaining wall blocks at the Temple of Baalbek clearly shows that they are far more eroded than the Roman ruins of the Temple of Jupiter and the other 2 Roman temples also found at the site. Since the retaining wall stone is of the same type as that used in the temple, it is reasonable and logical to conclude that the heavily eroded blocks are much older. It is therefore also logical to suppose that the Roman temple was actually built as a superstructure upon a much older existing platform. This would naturally help explain why such a remote location was chosen for the construction of the temple. Namely, because it provided Augustus with a ready-made platform upon which to build. The archaeological community has reacted with open ridicule to the idea that the platform and retaining wall predate the temple itself. The substantial erosion visible on the enormous retaining wall blocks fully qualifies as physical evidence that they are older than the actual ruins of the Temple of Jupiter. However, scholars have a problem with this theory because it would mean that when the Romans built the Temple of Jupiter, they constructed it upon a platform that had previously been built by a far more ancient civilization. And conventional archaeologists certainly do not wish to raise the issue of an ancient civilization. The Roman Empire was well known for being rather self-centered, and yet nowhere in the Roman records is there a single claim of having built the extraordinary retaining wall. Actual texts describing Roman transportation capabilities during the reigns of several emperors, including Augustus, still exist. These records clearly show that the practical transport limit for large stone blocks within the Roman Empire was just over 300 metric tons, and even that was achieved only with great difficulty. For example, the famous transport of the 323-ton Lateran obelisk to Rome was an extremely difficult and dangerous undertaking spanning the reigns of 3 emperors. Yet the transport of the enormous 800-ton blocks at Baalbek for the Temple of Jupiter is never mentioned in Roman records. This fact immediately raises further questions. It is worth noting that during the time of Augustus, the Romans knew and frequently used concrete. The Colosseum in Rome is an excellent example of classic Roman concrete construction. Another fact is that it was never the Roman style to build with megalithic blocks. In fact, such megalithic architecture appears nowhere else in the entire Roman Empire. It is also significant that the Ptolemies gave Baalbek the title Heliopolis. For the site to receive that special name, Baalbek must already have been an ancient sacred place and already possessed remarkable architecture or some significant connection with the other Heliopolis, the City of the Sun, in Egypt. There is another clue. In AD 636, the Temple of Jupiter was captured by the Arabs, who converted it into a fortress by carrying out their own additional construction. This means that the blocks used in the Arab sections of Baalbek were laid about 650 years after the blocks of the Roman Temple. Let us consider this puzzle. If the great retaining wall blocks were Roman, then the newer Arab blocks should display the erosion expected of Roman blocks after the first 600 or 700 years since they had been laid. Correct. So how then can the erosion of the massive retaining wall blocks be so much greater than both the older Roman temple blocks and the newer Arab blocks over the additional 500 years since the Arab section was constructed? According to local legend, Baalbek was a religious center dedicated to Baal during Phoenician times. Local Arab traditions actually date the Cyclopean retaining wall blocks back to the time of Cain and Abel. Other myths claim that the platform was built by the gods in ancient times. Near the southern entrance of Baalbek is the quarry from which the stones used in the temples and retaining walls were cut. No trace of an ancient road between the quarry and the temple has ever been found, which also raises questions about how the enormous 800-ton monoliths were transported to the site. This absence of any roadway can mean only one of two things. Either the retaining wall blocks were transported so far back in antiquity that every trace of the road has long since vanished, or no road was ever needed for the task. In fact, a road would have been of little use anyway, because of the immense weight of the blocks. The foundation of any road capable of supporting such a task would itself have had to be truly enormous. And if such a road had ever existed, some trace of it would undoubtedly have survived to the present day. So how were the blocks moved? Another enormous stone block, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, still lies in the ancient quarry where it was cut in antiquity. Measuring 21.5 meters, tall 4.8 meters, tall 4.2 meters, and weighing approximately 1,000 tons, it is the largest quarried stone block in the world. There is no crane in the world capable of moving these quarried blocks from the quarry to the temple site. Such a task still lies far beyond our current transportation capabilities.